Hi, everyone. I'm Doc. I'm a clinical psychotherapist.
And I'm Cece. I'm a professional musician.
We're two friends who spend a lot of time unpacking each other's bullshit.
And this podcast is a way for us to help you through yours.
Welcome to Let's Unpack This.
We want to talk a little bit today about perception, right?
Yeah. I feel like,
A lot of people have been bringing this up. I know you experience this a lot. People, trying to work through their perceptions. And I know I personally have a really screwed up perception. I have my whole life. So this is like perfect for us to talk about. We're just like sitting here at your kitchen table, super casual. And
drinking our matcha.
yeah, mine's done, but it's fine.
Sip that tea.
So where do we begin?
So, what I have come to understand is that everyone has a different perception of everything. Genuinely. Not even like to try to, like, you're saying that to get yourself out of, a situation, or like getting out of, maybe if someone comes to you and is like, hey, I'm hurt by this, or hey, did you mean it this way? People genuinely have different perceptions of everything. And I think it's important to talk a little bit about that, because I don't think people realize that that's a thing. That the way that we perceive the world is not factual, is not based in reality. It's based in our
Personal reality.
But not...
Again, mine's fucked. Let's just note that.
Let's unpack this.
I said it before, like, I have an issue with reality.
And what is that issue?
My instinct is always to fight reality. Like, I don't like reality. It's not even that I don't like it because it's not the way I want it. It's that I have some weird aversion to my own perception.
Because it doesn't fit into what you're used to.
Right. Or I don't like the way that I perceive things.
Ooh.
Like, I don't like the way that I think of other people or criticize people, or so then you're dealing with perception and you're judging yourself.
Yeah.
Hello.
Ugh, the opposite of self-love and being gentle with yourself.
Literally.
But think about it. I mean, coming from, and I don't want to speak for you, so correct me if I'm wrong, like coming from a more negative or pessimistic, so to speak, worldview, like, that's not your fault.
No.
Like, that's all that you've known for so long.
But here's the funny thing, because I feel that way. Like, I feel negative and I feel pessimistic, but everyone my whole life has told me how positive I am.
Yeah, how fucking weird is that?
So I'm like, who the fuck am I?
I'm the opposite.
That's why we work so well together. We're such good friends.
In my head, I'm so positive, and then everyone's like, why are you such a fucking bitch? And I'm like, what?
And I think I've really struggled with that because, and it made it really hard for me to like get help when I've needed it, because I would feel a certain way inside, but I would not portray it. So everybody would think everything's fine. When really, in certain times of my life, I was dying inside.
Right.
And so that's like other people's perception of me is different than my perception of myself.
Well, and how much of that do you think is the mask, like the shadow self, so to speak, or mask versus shadow self, I mean, that maybe that is what you've learned to portray out of survival. Because what would that mean if I did actually portray how I was authentically feeling? How would people respond to me? What would happen?
Well, I had that experience, like, growing up, where, like, I would express the way I felt and then was made to believe that, like...
That wasn't true.
It wasn't true. Or, like, I was being dramatic, So then that just became my narrative. Okay, this is just who I am, and, like, I have to just deal with these feelings. Like, for example, like, when I was younger, like, I struggled with depression and anxiety, and, like, I tried to verbalize that to people in my life, and like we've said before, like, people can only do what they can with what they know. And like at the time, like looking back, like I was kind of asking for help.
Yeah.
But like their perception was different, you know? So that became like the story that I told myself. Like, okay, maybe my perception's off. Maybe I'm not, you know, really struggling with these things. So I'm just going to deal with them.
Yeah, you were taught to question yourself. And when we're taught to question ourselves, we're taught that our reality is not, in fact, reality, which is a lot of what can happen in our childhoods. Well, then we do that in our adulthood. We'll question ourselves. We'll question other people. We'll overanalyze. We'll overthink. Again, it's another survival mechanism to make sense of why maybe my parent wasn't taking me seriously or told me what was happening was not, in fact, so. When you're sitting there thinking, no, well, what I'm feeling is what I'm feeling, or no, this is what's going on. But as a kid, you know, what are we gonna do? Keep fighting our parents? Like, we don't know how to do that,
right?
But that makes a lot of sense as to why now you don't like using your words, your perception and reality, because you know, what is it really? So everyone's perception is their own reality. So you have to consider, when I say you, I just mean like the audience. I have to consider that there are multiple realities going on at the same time. And that can sometimes be a lot to consider and remember. It's not our job to be responsible for, again, other people's feelings. It's not our job to be responsible in decoding other people's actions, mixed messages, passive aggression. But it is important to consider, hey, like my actions may affect somebody or bring about something in somebody else because they're coming into this dynamic or this conversation or this situation with their own condition. Yeah, their own shit. Like they're coming in with fucking 5 suitcases. I'm coming in with 5 suitcases.
I have 10.
We now have 10. We have 10 to 20 suitcases to unpack. And I don't mean that to mean that we have to walk around eggshells around one another. No, it actually can be less of that when we consider that our perception is not the only one.
Right. So in dealing with other people, like I find when I'm having a conflict with somebody, it's because I'm not considering their perception a lot of the time.
Right.
Like I'm not being open-minded to like thinking like, oh, maybe the way that I'm thinking isn't the only way.
Exactly.
And usually when I'm able to like have that point of view where like I can be open to their perspective, like I'm able to navigate a conversation easily. I'm able to like, even if it's a difficult one, I'm able to go in and be like, hey, I understand like where you're coming from. This is where I'm coming from. These, and then there's like the facts of the situation that you have to involve.
It's even asking the other person where they're coming from.
Right.
Like, what's your experience in this? What are you feeling? What's the story that you're telling yourself? A tool that I teach clients all the time when expressing how they feel to somebody else, especially partners, is saying the story I'm telling myself right now is...
I've literally said this to my partner.
Perfect. Perfect.
When you do this, the story I tell myself is, because I know he's not doing... or somebody isn't doing something to me. It's usually the way that I'm reacting to it.
And what that does by saying that allows the other person to, you know, either debunk it, right? Or at least express their view, express where they're coming from.
Right.
Instead of when we say to people like, you're doing this and you're doing that, and then the other person just becomes defensive and all is lost at that point. Yep. So you're taking responsibility for the fact that it is a story that you're telling yourself, versus saying that is exactly what that person is. Because I have to tell you, I will be dealing with whether it's, you know, people I work with or people in my personal life, and they will genuinely say that they are coming from a completely different place in a situation than, you know, their partner may, that I think that they are, but that is truth for them. And
that's
it's
their truth,
yeah. And it's hard for, you know, I or someone else to understand sometimes of, wait, what do you mean that you weren't intentionally doing that?
You did it.
You did it. Like, what do you mean? But I have to tell you, like, most people, what they do is not coming from a place of malintent.
Right.
Most people don't have ill motives behind what they're doing. They're just doing them. They're just going off automatic behaviors.
Off of thought. Yeah, they're not thinking about it.
Exactly. Doing exactly what they've done always. I talk a lot about with people I work with. They hear me say this phrase all the time. Like, most of us are stuck in self. Mm-hmm. Most of us have not done the work to be conscious, to become self-aware, to become conscious choosers of our behaviors. So when you are just acting out automatically, constantly, all day in, day out, like there isn't any motive or intention. You're just doing what you've always done.
Right.
And so we constantly like try to get someone else to like explain to us why they did something. And
why did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Or why are you like this?
Why are you like this? Like, how could you have done that? Well, they don't know the answer because there wasn't any thought behind it. Most people are not thinking before they do something, which is the problem. But like, life becomes a lot easier, especially in dynamics with others, when you are considering and then becoming curious,
right,
about other people's perceptions and the fact that like they actually might not be doing that thing to you on purpose. Like maybe you're not that important. I don't know. And you know, like they have their own 5 bags of luggage coming into this situation, and that's why it's important for us to express our feelings to other people and express like where we're coming from and express like, hey, when you did this, this is how I felt, because how was the other person ever supposed to know that what they were doing allowed you to feel something?
Right. So what is your experience with like reacting to a situation where somebody had a different perception about something you did?
Yuck.
Because
this happens to
because it
me
hits
often.
your ego.
Yeah.
When that happens.
Yeah.
It's like
This has happened to me often because I am very direct.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to become direct. I was not always direct, so I learned to speak my truth, and other people don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it has nothing to do with them. Like, I'm just speaking how I feel or what I need or whatever. And so how I usually deal with that is I, express like, hey, I hear that you feel that way, or I see that you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, allowing the other person to try to feel seen, heard, and understood. That was not my intention, or that's not what I meant, or sometimes that's not even what I said. Right? That happens a lot. I see in sessions, especially with couples. Like, one person will say something, and I will have the other person repeat it back, and it is not remotely what that person said. And I hear that often. I deal with that often.
That's interesting.
Yeah. We are genuinely taking what other people say and putting it through a lens in our brain,
yes,
and then spitting it back. And I will be standing in front of somebody and be like, that's literally not what was said at all. So I clarify what I said and also make sure that what I'm saying is actually what I mean.
Right.
So being very clear in what that is, rather than beating around the bush or whatever, masking words because I'm afraid of,
right,
being too direct of what what'll happen from that. And then I, have an open conversation with that person about how, what they're coming in with about what happened is not, in fact, what happened.
Right.
Or at least what happened from what I was doing or saying. And so then how can we make this work, or how can we allow each other to feel more comfortable, or what do they need from me? Like, what do I maybe need to look at or change to help them feel more comfortable? But again, there is a fine line between that and taking on responsibility for another person's feelings. Like, again, it's not my responsibility to decode another person's passive aggression. Sorry. It's not. Or to manage everyone's feelings.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people in my life. How am I supposed to be able to do that?
Right.
It's not my responsibility. So it's being conscious of like, hey, my actions may affect other people, so I try to not be harmful to others, right? Like, that's really important. But on the flip side of that doesn't mean muting my truth or muting my needs as a way to manage what other people are feeling. That's codependent.
Right. I think on the other side of that too, like to be able to do that, you have to be really honest with yourself, because like Are you okay over there?
Dropping the same thing over and over
It's
again.
fine. This is a super casual episode.
Okay.
We literally have no script. We're not like no notes, nothing, right?
Nada.
We're going off the cuff. So anyway, I was saying like I have to be honest with myself because I also too can be very blunt.
Right.
Whether or not I'm also taking into account not only am I hurting this other person, but like are the things that I'm asking of this person reasonable?
Ooh.
And this goes back to like our episode on codependency. Like, yes, boundaries are good, but like if I'm not honest with myself about what I'm asking of this person, like we're human, you know, like yes, this may be my need, but like I do have to keep in mind that I'm often very dramatic and needy. So right? Like isn't that
Yeah.
because my perception of like what I may believe that I need, like it just requires a little bit more thought and energy if you're actually trying to work on this.
Yes. And, you know, knowing that you may have a certain feeling or a certain need, but that's not the other person's feeling or need.
Mm-hmm.
Or they may not be able to give you that. Or
Right.
they may not be able to show up for you in that way. And that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with the 5 fucking suitcases they walked in with.
Yep.
It's really, really fascinating, especially when I work with as many people as I do, of how there's always another side to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask clients to use it as a tool of like, ask yourself, like, what could the other side of the story be?
Right.
Especially if you're not able to ask the other person maybe what their story is, or their side of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean then that you have to, again, betray yourself in any way or minimize or change what your needs or boundaries are. And actually sometimes it might, but it doesn't mean that you have to change anything. Like you just might have to decide to walk away from that person
Right.
or walk away from that dynamic or, you know, change something within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that that person might not be
Not be able to meet you there.
Yeah. Like we have to, you know, meet people where they're at, but sometimes we have to leave them there.
Ooh.
Can I drop this
Share
mic?
that shit.
Can I drop
Please
this
don't.
mic? Whack. It's so true though. Something that you brought up though about being really direct.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've learned about myself is that sometimes I will forcibly share my feelings or opinion, which by the way, like no one fucking cares what your opinion is.
Yep.
But we'll get to that. And
Ooh.
I'm triggered. People literally pay me for my opinion and they still don't fucking care. They're just like, no. But I will literally like get really heated in sharing, like be like, no, this is how I feel. And like, this is what's happening. And like, this is what you're doing because I want to be so badly seen, heard, and understood. And I have people in my life, luckily, who do or try to do that for me, where they're like, I hear you, I see you. And I'm like, oh my God. And like, I literally like fucking like orgasm or something. I'm like, yes.
This is what I've been searching for my whole life.
Like, oh my God, thank you. So there's that. But I've learned that that is not the way for me to do that. I have to do that for myself.
Right.
And meet those needs for myself. Me screaming louder or like repeating myself or like coming at someone is not going to get me seen and heard.
No.
And especially not understood. They're not going to want to fucking listen to whatever I'm saying.
And if they do,
I'm
it's
yelling
not
at them.
going to be in any sort of authentic way.
No, it's just all rooted in fear.
Yeah.
Fear that you are not seeing and hearing me because what does that mean about me?
I'm not important enough. I'm less than.
Not
I'm
lovable.
not lovable. Yep.
Not good enough.
All these things we tell ourselves. I need like a spa day after we record these episodes.
Yeah, I need to go cry.
I quit smoking like 2 years ago, and like I literally, because that's my like my insides looking for a coping mechanism when we talk about these topics. I'm like, oh, I want a cigarette.
Oh my God. Yeah. After we recorded our codependency episode, you're like, I need a cigarette. And we haven't smoked in over 2 years. And I literally started stretching. Like I
need to like shake it out
yeah,
of my body.
Like we were not okay.
Yeah.
We had to like remove all of that tension
physical.
from our bodies.
Yeah. So
You know, even for people who do the work do the work and teach
you
other people.
literally teach other people how
Yeah.
to do this. I think that's what's so great about us doing this podcast, because people might have a misunderstanding about, you know, mental health and, you know, doing work on yourself, that like, you know, just because you're the teacher, like these things don't apply to you. And I think it's a really cool thing that, I mean, me just as your friend, you know, you could sit and talk about these things, and like we all struggle with these same issues.
We do. It's so weird because everyone's the same, like we've talked about, but then we all come from a different place or have, a different perception. So we're the same and different in all these ways. And it's just trying to, you know, not necessarily navigate everyone else's, but navigate your own best be able to interact with other people and experience like true love and connection with others. Because like we've talked about before too, we'll block ourselves off from other people because we don't feel seen, heard, and understood, or we think that what we're feeling is not important. Our needs are not important enough. You know, what I have to say is not important enough. And so we block ourselves off.
I think like also looking at like I have to not base, and we've talked about this, like my self-worth on someone else's perception of me.
I love this. Guess what?
What?
We don't even know what the other person's perception of us is.
What I think their perception is of me.
Exactly. It's all made up in our heads.
Yep.
Unless you ask somebody, you have no idea what they're
and
thinking
even if you do ask them,
they could lie.
Yeah.
So guess what? You're fucked. You know, like we never really know what someone else's perception of us, and it doesn't matter because it's not an authentic representation of who we are, because we actually most of the time don't even let other people know who we are.
Yeah. No.
So what they're thinking of us is just a result of their own shit, their own insecurities, and also who cares?
Right.
I mean, I know we do, but
well, that's like, it's the problem with attachment. Like I'll base like,
I just rejected that word.
Yeah, attachment. I wonder if like when I edit this episode, I could say the word attachment and it'll like reverberate. Attachment.
I hope that it does.
I hope that I could figure out how to do that, because it'd be epic.
That'd be great. Attachment, ment.
Yeah.
It's just ongoing forever. And then it like shows up in your life like 10 years later as like a codependent trauma bonding situation. And then you want to kill yourself. Okay.
Anyway, back to the topic.
I digress. But it's that disappointment of your own self to try and go off of what another person's perception of you is.
Right.
And do you know how many people that we are dealing with in a day? Like how
Too many people.
Yeah, like how can we
go away?
How can we live up to anybody's expectation or perception of us? That's crazy. That's why we have a lack of mental health because of that. Trying to live up to our own perception of what we should be, what do we think everyone else thinks that we should be.
Too many.
That's insane.
Right.
The other part when it comes to dealing with somebody and your differences in opinions or perceptions is not trying to convince them of your perception. Like, one, you are just inadvertently telling yourself that you are not being seen, heard, and understood. So you're betraying yourself in that way. And you don't need somebody else to understand you in order to validate your own feelings or have your own feelings be validated.
Right.
You know, in setting boundaries, I say to people, like, you don't need to understand why I'm doing this or why I feel this way, but I do need you to respect it.
That's the same for perception, too. Like when you're having a discussion.
Yeah, like how many times have you either said or heard somebody else say, you know, when they're dealing in a conflict with somebody and they're like, well, why did you do that? Or like, how could you not get that? Or how could you not understand where I'm coming from? Okay, well, they did that thing because that's what they did. There's no why behind it. That's like, that question triggers me like no other. When someone's like, why did you do that? It already happened. Why are you fucking asking me that? It's such a critical question. And, but that's my own shit.
Yeah.
And then
I'm that person.
Yeah.
I'm literally that person that goes, I want to know the why.
I know. And I'm like, but it already happens. Like, who cares? Or like, how could you not understand where I'm coming from? Like, they don't understand because they don't understand.
Yeah, that's it.
That it doesn't invalidate.
It's like, well, I could tell you all the trauma from
yeah.
my whole life that would explain why I can't understand your perception. That's a whole other it's a whole other thing.
But the thing is them saying, you know, I understand that or I get that is, again, not actually validating anything. Like, you have to validate that for yourself of, this is where I'm coming from.
Right.
And this is how I feel, and this is what I need, and how can we come to a mutual understanding of respect and admiration with one another?
Right.
Even though we disagree or aren't coming from the same perception. Because that's possible. Like, you can move forward in love.
Yeah.
And not have the same perception about something or opinion on something. And also, trying to change other people's perceptions to fit into what you think they should be doing or what yours is, that's also not love.
No, it's selfish. It's self-serving.
Yeah. And like I said, people literally pay me for my opinion, and like sometimes I don't even want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They just want me to sometimes say like, hey, I see you.
Right.
I hear you. I get it. I've been there. You know, I'm so sorry for that. It's not, okay, well, so what I think you should do is.
Yeah.
Stop giving unsolicited advice. Stop it. No one asked you. I think that this is just something really important to talk about, because when I do bring it up to clients, sometimes it's the first time they're ever hearing that. That their worldview is not the only one. They're like, wait, really? Like, not everyone's thinking the way that I am? I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you wrong or bad. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And the automatic thoughts that we have are not our own. They are again, using this phrase, like, they are a product of our conditioned lived experiences. Like, my automatic thoughts that are rooted in self-doubt or self-pity or fear or selfishness, self-seeking motives, like, that's my ego. Those are not my thoughts that I am purposefully having.
Right.
And deliberating. Like, those are all thoughts that I need to observe and let pass without judgment. Yep.
Just let them go by.
Go down the river.
I can see them objectively and let them move on. That's when the growth begins.
Yes. Being the observer, not the active participant.
Yes. I could literally do a whole episode on that topic.
Not getting on the train.
No, like, I didn't know that I'm not my thoughts.
Yeah.
I had no idea that, like, I could just, you know, as crazy as they are, or as critical or as reasonable, like, I can take an objective view, and then I'm able to relate to the world and others in a much easier way.
Yes. You know, what other people do doesn't actually have to affect us.
Ooh, does it not now?
Isn't that crazy?
That's so crazy.
And again, like, it doesn't mean that you can't have feelings or you
Right.
won't have feelings or those feelings aren't valid, but
You can process them differently.
yeah, exactly. Like, I've tried really hard to express how I feel to people without trying to convince them of that, how I'm feeling or what that my perception is the entirety of that
Right.
reality.
Like, this is just my side.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, like, I'm out. And exit.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap this up about perception, basically what I've found is really helpful is that when I'm, you know, dealing with a situation, I mean, this is like every day, every minute stuff.
All the time.
I have to constantly be cognizant, use my words, of like how I'm perceiving things. And I have to constantly remind myself to be open-minded, that like my way isn't the only way.
It is not.
It is not the only way. And I can just be an observer of my thoughts. And I don't have to put myself into a box either. Like, with the way that I think. I have to avoid that.
Exactly. And how great is it that your way, my way, is not the only way? Like,
There is relief in that,
Yeah.
knowing that.
Like, I am grateful to experience your existence, even if the perception you're coming from or the opinion that you have is different than mine.
Yes, because I can learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
That's like so
yeah.
so great. Like once you can have that perspective on perception, that like you can use it as a tool to better understand yourself and others.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of this is in line with vulnerability. Like, I know there's so many triggering words we're using today. Yuck. You know, being open with somebody of, you know, this is my lens. This is where I'm coming from. This is how I'm feeling. This is me. And then allowing the other person to do the same. And then you guys can move forward together.
Yes.
How cool is that? Rather than being like, you know what? Cut off.
Yeah.
Bye.
Being resentful.
That's
because,
horrible.
Yeah.
To end relationships, friendships, whatever, just based off of the simple fact that you don't see things the same way or can't show up. You know, it's about trying to show up for ourselves and for each other.
There will be situations where that has to happen, though.
Yeah, that's true. For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, you just, because
they might not be able to show up.
They might not be able to show up, or you guys both do the work and you still are like, we disagree in too many ways that, like, this relationship isn't healthy for us. We're not bringing anything to the table for each other because we're just too. I mean, I haven't had that experience. No, I have had that experience where, like, I wasn't healthy enough to see it as that, though.
Right. Yeah. And, like, one of the most painful things ever is when someone says, you know what, I can't show up for you in the way that you need them to. I've had that happen with me. It's still something that I grieve to this day. Mm-hmm. But that has nothing to do with me. That has everything to do with that person. And that's also a lot of where this work comes from, is not taking things personally when other people do them. I know.
Hence the 4 agreements.
Yes.
Seriously. I have them on stickers around my house. Mm-hmm. Like, because I immediately want to take things personally. I always think that, like, yeah.
It's just an ego projection.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that it is. I'm telling you, I see it all day, every day. What other people are doing is not a reflection of you.
Right.
It is a reflection of them. And it may affect you. You may feel something from it. It's still not a reflection of you.
Right.
Take yourself out of what everyone else is doing.
Don't take yourself out.
No. Oh, yeah. Not in that way. No. Sorry. No. But out of, you know, what they're doing.
Right.
Notice how you're feeling. You know, again, use your triggers as teachers.
Yep.
You know, why someone else is doing something, why it's triggering you. Look at that, because then you can learn from that. Mm-hmm. But we're meant to love and help one another, not trigger one another. Well,
but we're going to be. We kind of are. That word trigger has, like, become such a, like, hot button word.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. Everybody's like, I'm so triggered. So, like, me and my friend were actually talking the other day, and I was, like, trying to explain something that triggered me without using the word triggered, because I didn't want to sound like like I wasn't, like, being serious, because I feel like people are always, like, using it in such a, like, loose way. There's, like, a couple words like that.
I have an assignment for all of us.
Okay.
Let's go back to using all of these words in the fucking correct way that they're meant to be used.
There we go.
Self-care.
Yes.
Triggered. Journey. What I know you hate that word. What other words are overused these days?
I don't know. Just go on Instagram. Just take a peek.
Can we go back to using them the way that they're meant to be?
Yeah, we've kind of lost our way.
Because this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
and then it takes away from
the reality of, or the severity of the situation.
Yeah. And also feeling like you can openly and authentically talk about when you are triggered, or, you know, what self-care really is, or, you know.
We're going to have a whole episode on self-care, like, specifically.
Yeah, even more so than the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because self-care is, again, not...
Because self-worth is different. And
yes. Yeah. Self-care is literally taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Not, let's go get a manicure and pedicure.
Hence why we will have an entirely
yeah
different episode dedicated to this topic.
I had a great session once where a client and I were going off about how we view manicures and pedicures as tasks. Like, when people talk about being self-care.
I don't enjoy it.
No. I have to take the time out of my
takes a
fucking
lot
day.
It takes a lot of time.
To go and do it.
The only thing I like about it is sitting in when I'm getting a pedicure, the massage chair. I'm like, this is worth it.
Okay.
You don't enjoy that?
No.
Oh, and the thing rolls up your back.
I want to just go to my massage therapist and have her, you know,
Yeah.
touch my whole body.
She is the best.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I digress again. But we bring this up because we hope that it'll be helpful when interacting with other people in having a more harmonious existence with others within yourself, rather than just walking around and being stuck in self,
or just like not being like not thinking about anything that you do yourself.
Exactly.
I have to, like, a lot of my behaviors sometimes I have to look at, because I still don't always choose the right action. It's like, how would I perceive this if I was on the outside looking in? And that's not to say like that I care what other people think. Like, I sometimes have to literally take myself out of the situation to have an objective view.
Yeah. But how much better does that end up serving you?
Yeah.
In the long run. Uncomfortable. I don't love being wrong. Right? I don't love feeling invalidated, but that's why I have to meet those needs myself, so that I then am not seeking them out from other people, or when they're not met by other people, I end up disappointed or depleted or in, you know, agonizing pain on the
Suffering.
floor. Yeah, and suffering. Another one of those words.
Suffering.
I suffer all the time. My grandmother and my parents have been telling me that I'm a sufferer since I was a straight born child.
Stop.
Oh, how you suffer.
Is that what they say to you?
All the time.
Wait, what is that quote? It's like, pain is
the touchstone to suffering?
No. No. The quote is, pain is the touchstone to spiritual growth. Not suffering. But the quote I'm thinking about is, pain is necessary, suffering is optional.
Suffering is so optional.
Is it though?
I don't know.
No. It is sometimes it's necessary sometimes for growth. Sometimes I have to suffer in order to change. Can you relate?
Oh, I can absolutely relate. As we've discussed, I love to suffer for long periods of time.
Yeah, it takes me like a great amount of pain in order to change.
Yeah, but optional. Like, the pain doesn't have to get great enough.
Yeah, it doesn't always, but most of the time it does. So in closing,
we hope that this has been helpful in helping you have more harmonious relationships with other people, and also a more harmonious relationship with yourself, in becoming more of the observer, and understanding that other people have different perceptions than us, and that's okay.
Yep.
And a tip we want to leave you with at the end of this episode is to check out the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Yes.
It's a life-changing...
It took me a year to read that book.
I read it 3 times.
Because I was so just, like, I read it and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then, like, I probably just, like, physically rejected it.
Exactly. I was actually going to say, so this happens for a lot of people who read it. Your ego and your brain are going to reject what you're reading, because what is in this book is what's going to get you out of being stuck in self, and is going to minimize your ego, and your ego doesn't want that. So you're going to check out. You're going to put it down for a year.
Yeah.
Right? Don't.
No.
It's a game changer.
And if, like, I finished it with the audiobook because I just recently realized that I respond better to, like, listening, like, audibly learning. And so I wish I would have just done that from the beginning.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
All right. But remember, you are not unlovable until someone loves you. You are and always have been lovable since you got here.
Thanks for tuning in.
We love you.
Hi, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like our podcast, please make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can like us on social media. Our Instagram handle is Let's Unpack This Pod. You can find us on Facebook. You can also email us to letsunpackthispodcast@gmail.com and submit your questions or topic ideas. When we read the questions, they will be anonymous, so your name will not be on the podcast. So please feel free to be open about any issues you're having or situations that you would want us to unpack. Our next episode will be airing in 2 weeks. We will be reading a listener's question and discussing codependency. Please make sure you subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast so you can get alerts when our next episode is up. We thank you for listening.